Nishino Akane wakes up in the morning and gets prepared for school. There she is greeted by most students, however, she sees Kageno, the one she despises. He always calls her by the wrong name, which makes her angry. After school, Akane calls her driver, but he doesn't pick up as he was attacked by some men. She is forced to head home walking. On her way, she is kidnapped by the men that beat the driver. While she loses consciousness, she sees Kageno approaching. Later, Akane wakes up tied in some warehouse. The kidnapper tells her that she just needs to stay there, and once they get the ransom, she will be freed. Outside, Kageno observes the kidnapper and changes clothes and puts on a mask. Kageno then comes down from the roof window. The kidnapper pulls out a gun, but Kageno throws a piece of glass, injuring his arm and disarming him. The other kidnapper takes out a knife and attacks Kageno. Kageno manages to disarm the man, but still gets overwhelmed. Then he breaks the man's leg and beats him up. Kageno frees Akane and tells her to be more careful next time. The next morning, the news report that Kageno got hit by a truck and didn't survive. Kageno gets reborn as Sid, the son of Baron Kageno, an aristocrat living out in the boonies. He quickly understands the situation and feels there is magic in the air. The Kageno family has been making Dark Knights who can enhance their abilities using magic. The family has big hopes for Claire, Sid's older sister, who is quite talented. Sid grows up staying as a background character and doesn't draw any attention to him. However, at night he comes out and fights bandits. Using his slime sword, he easily kills the bandits and takes their gold and treasures. He also finds a cage with some rotting creature, realizing it's possessed and that it's magical overloaded. He takes interest in it and takes it home, where he shoots it with magic and does other experiments on it. After a month, he finally manages to contain the magical overload. The creature then returns to its normal form, a young, beautiful elf. Wondering what to do, Sid decides to put on an act. As the elf awakens, Sid states he broke her curse that has been put on Hero's descendants. He shows her a fiction book about 3 heroes who defeated Diablos and tells her it's actually a true story, and in his dying breath, the demon put a curse on them. He then explains that the cult of Diablos are plotting to revive the demon. While most people had forgotten about Diablos, Sid works in the shadows to stop the cult. He introduces himself as Shadow. He lurks in the shadow and hunts shadows. Sid asks her if she would join him. She agrees and explains they need to find more heroes' descendants and expand their organization. Sid agrees and names their organization Shadow Garden and the girl Alpha. 3 years pass and Sid is now 13 years old. He practices with his sister, and while he can defeat her easily, he acts weak and lets her defeat him. Claire is now 15 years old, and at that age, the nobles start attending the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. On the day Claire had a departure for the academy, she disappears. In those 3 years, Alpha had collected more members for their organization. Sid asked Beta where is Alpha, and Beta explains she is looking for clue to finding Claire. Beta explains that Claire is likely still alive and was kidnapped by a high-ranking member belonging to the cult of Diablos. At the hideout, Viscount Grease is holding Claire chained with magic sealing chains. He comments her father taught her good on how to fight, but Claire explains she learned all by fighting her brother. Grease notes that for just in case, they need to look into her brother too. In that moment, Claire breaks one of the chains and injures her right arm to free herself, telling him she will kill him if they touch her brother. Grease then knocks her out, and a man comes informing him that there are intruders. Grease attacks Alpha, but she has no troubles blocking his attacks and injures him, stating she won't kill him until they get answers from him. Seeing he is overwhelmed, Grease takes a pill that boosts his magic. He manages to push away Alpha and then breaks the floor and runs away. Alpha tells the girls there is no need to chase him as Shadow is after him. Meanwhile, Shadow is lost and doesn't know where the girls went. While walking around the tunnels, he encounters Grease. He attacks Shadow, who easily blocks his attack. Shadow then notes that he has more magic power than Alpha. Grease takes more pills and buffs himself even more. Shadow manages to block his attacks, and then using large amount of magic, he cuts down Grease. The next day, Claire returns home in a bad mood. Her wounds heal overnight and she departures for the academy. Sid is eager to go to the academy himself, but he has 2 more years and needs to give the girls some work. However, Alpha tells him it's time they leave him, which leaves him shocked. Alpha told Sid that Cult of Diablos is an enormous organization that runs on a global scale, and in order to fight it, they needed to split. When Sid turns 15, he enrolls in the same school as his sister in the royal capital of Midgar Kingdom. 7 months into his academy life, Sid continues to live as a background character and make friends with Skeletal and Poctado. Arriving at school, they see the girl in question, Princess Alexa Midgar, who rejects another guy's confession. However, Sid is excited about it, wanting to experience such confession as a background character. That evening, he goes to confess to Alexa. Shaking and muttering, he feels he did a great job as a background character confession. However, to his surprise, she accepts, stating she was waiting for someone like him. The rumors quickly spread and people start to wonder who is Sid and what's so great about him. Later, Sid joins Section 1 team, where their advisor is Zenon, the official royal fencing instructor. Alexia tells Zenon that she is Sid's girlfriend now, who tells her that won't change the fact that she is betrothed to him, even if it's still a public secret. Sid then realizes what is going on. After that, Sid asks Alexia that she just wanted someone to help her get out of the engagement with Zenon and choose a low-class aristocrat, whom she could easily control. As she confirms, Sid states he doesn't want more attention and isn't interested in being mixed up in her problems. Alexia tells him that's a bit cold for him, as she knows he fake confessed to her, since his friends easily told her everything. Alexia wants to continue the boyfriend act until Zenon gives up. She takes out and throws a gold coin. While riding the train, Alexia tells Sid that he has the fencing basics, but nothing more than that, yet she can't take her eyes off him. Alexia reveals she always wanted to be as good as her sister. She didn't have what her sister had and decided to become stronger by herself. The train stops and Alexia leaves, telling Sid goodbye, making him guess this is the end of his unwanted relationship. The next day at the school gate, Zenon and two other men stop Sid and his friends. Zenon states Sid should know that Alexia didn't return to her dorm last night, and they are investigating it as a potential kidnapping. Since Sid was the last person seen with her, he is their first suspect. Elsewhere, Alexia wakes up chained in a cell. She sees a humanoid monster in the next cell. A man then shows up, excited to get royal blood. She wonders why her blood, and the man states it's demon blood and he will resurrect the demon. Meanwhile, Sid is being beaten and interrogated about the princess location. He gets excited as he finds this such a classic minor character interrogation and decided to act properly so they can outshine him, and starts yelling and crying that he doesn't know anything. Zenon meets with Iris and states he feels responsible for Alexia's kidnapping. Since it's been 5 days, Iris decides to release him, but orders that they keep track of him. After Sid is released, he goes home. Alpha shows up as well and explains that their organization is growing and they have been gaining more information on the cult. Alpha explains that Alexia was kidnapped by the cult due to her blood and they are investigating it. Before leaving, Alpha also tells him that Delta is here and she has been missing him. Sid sets his eminence in Shadow Room. A bit later, Beta shows up. He tells her the time has come. Beta gets excited and explains that they have gathered all available people in the capital, 114 people, a number which surprises Sid. Beta explains that they plan to launch simultaneous attacks on all sect hideouts. As she explains the girl roles, Sid stops her, giving her a letter and stating that he will be taking Delta's spot. The Shadow Garden then start their attack. The doctor rushes to Alexia. As he injects the disfigured creature, it becomes much larger and stronger and kills the man. To Alexia's surprise, the monster then cuts her chains and frees her. While Alexia looks for an exit, she encounters Zenon, who explains that this is his facility and he was funding the doctor. Zenon explains that with her blood and his research, he will be guaranteed the 12th seat in the Knights of the Rounds, the highest-ranking knights in the order. Alexia attacks him, but she is no match for Zenon, who easily disarms her. Sid then comes and introduces himself as Shadow. As Zenon attacks Shadow, Sid moves behind him and mocks Zenon. Meanwhile, the monster had escaped above ground. After evacuating the citizens, the knights face it, but their attacks are ineffective as the monster just heals. Iris comes and inflicts a more serious wound on the monster, but it heals that too. She decides to get more serious and cuts the monster arm, however the monster easily regenerates it. Seeing that, Iris decides to cut it to small pieces so that it won't be able to regenerate. After inflicting several wounds, Alpha comes and states she is just making her suffer. Alpha then attacks the monster, curing it and returning it to her original human form, a young girl. Alpha then tells Iris that they are Shadow Garden and she should just stay back and enjoy the show as they deal with this situation. Meanwhile, Zenon decides to get more serious and uses more magical power, but is still easily overwhelmed by Shadow. Annoyed, Zenon takes out some red pills and explains that by taking them he will awaken a new nature beyond human limitations. Zenon then takes the pills and transforms, stating he is the third awakened. Having far more destructive power than before, Zenon attacks Shadow, however, he easily blocks him once again. He then sets a magic circle around Zenon, which surprises him how powerful it is. Shadow then tells him to witness his almightiness as he uses his almighty power. He then chants, "I am atomic." A huge explosion then occurs, leaving a large crater in the middle of the city. Alexia finds herself unharmed in the middle of the crater. Iris sees her and comes down, hugging her and states she is glad that she is alive. Sometime after that, Alexia returns to school and she tells Sid of what happened. They were pretending to be a couple, but now Zenon is dead. Alexia wonders if Sid wants to keep the relationship going, but Sid refuses. That shocks Alexia. who then attacks him. The Shadow Garden girls are excited about how powerful Shadow is and how all of their enemies will one day vanish from his light, just like Zenon. However, they have one issue. Someone has been pretending to be from Shadow Garden and delivering justice. They are covering their tracks well, but Gamma is sure they will catch them. Iris now knows about the cult and Shadow Garden. She knows that Zenon was follower of the cult, and because of that, she doesn't trust the Knight's order. She trusts Glenn and Marco, and decides to form a new investigation team with them. Iris reveals they have found an item, but need to find someone who can decipher its functions. Iris shows an artifact they found in the hideout of the cult. However, as they can't decipher it, she asks Sherry, the most brilliant mind in the kingdom, if she can decipher it. Her father, Lutheran, encourages Sherry to do it. Sherry accepts and Iris decides to assign the Crimson Order to keep watch on them. Sid, Skell, and Poe go to the store, but the line is so big that they have to wait 80 minutes for their turns. While waiting, a worker from the store asks Sid if he can come with her and answer some survey. As Sid enters the store, he feels it's like a department store from his old world. Sid is eventually taken to a throne room in a house above the store building. Sid then sees Gamma next to the throne and figures at her store. She confirms and states she recreated it from the wisdom Sid shared with them. Gamma invites Sid to sit on the throne, and as he sits, he feels like a king. Sid guesses she is making money, and Gamma confirms, stating she has several franchises around the cities and that they even use mail orders for remote areas. Gamma introduces Nu, their newest member of the Numbers, and explains that Alpha acknowledged her skill. Sid tells her that he will call her if he needs her. Sid and his friends then rush heading home. Hearing something, he stops and tells his friends that he needs to poop right away and tells them to go before they see him shit himself. Sid then goes in the back alley where he heard Alexei fighting, but is surprised to see her fighting some men who claim to be from Shadow Garden. They manage to injure her, but Sid shows up as Shadow and kills one of the men and tells the others that they will also pay for impersonating Shadow Garden. Shadow follows the men and kills one of them. Nu then shows up and congratulates Shadow on finding them that fast and requests that he leaves the rest to her, and she will get information from the remaining man. Shadow agrees and leaves. Nu then cuts the man's arm, disarming him, stating she isn't as forgiving as Shadow. Elsewhere, a man informs the Knight that he lost contact to the puppet and the two other men. The Knight states it's fine as they located the item they need and their priority is retrieving it. Sid decides to give a chocolate that he took from Gamma's store to the first girl he sees. Sherry then sits next to him and he gives her the chocolate and leaves. Nu disguises as a student and approaches Sid at school. She tells him that the man they caught had a powerful brainwashing that broke his mind and wasn't able to obtain any information from him. While Nu explains things, Sid is distracted and is thinking how Skell ended up signing him for a fencing tournament. Later at the tournament, Claire easily wins her fight. Next up is the student council president Rose versus Sid. He decides to show his 48 techniques he mastered. As their fight starts, Sid lets himself get hit and coughs fake blood, showing his secret background character technique spinning drill fall, bloody tornado, and unsightly defeat in the first round at the hands of an indisputable champion. Sid continues to get one-shotted, but stands after each hit, wanting the fight to continue. Oriana is surprised by his determination and decides to get serious. As she attacks, the judge jumps in and saves Sid, announcing the end of the fight and Oriana as winner. Sid protests and wants to continue as he still has 33 techniques to show off, but he is carried out. After the fight, Sid approached by Sherry, who explains she watched his fight and he was incredible as he kept standing up. She then gives him cookies she baked as thanks and suggests they can start as friends. Sid isn't sure why she gave him cookies and what she means by starting as friends, but he accepts. Sid meets her father and recognizes him as an important person. After some small talk, he uses his injuries as an excuse to leave. After 5 days, Sid returns to school. At the same time, a masked knight from the cult decides to start their plan. He creates a barrier around the school, but seemingly only Sid notices it. Some men then come in the room claiming to be from Shadow Garden and explaining that they are taking over the academy. Oriana decides to fight them, but realizes she can't use magic. The fake Shadow Garden members are able to use magic, and one of them easily breaks Oriana's sword. He then attempts to kill her, but Sid rushes in and pushes her away while taking the hit and then falls to the ground covered in blood. Rose wonders why he gave his life away to save her, but then guesses he loved her. The terrorists then move all the students to the auditorium. Sid starts hitting his heart, and as it starts beating again, he wakes up. He reveals it was his secret technique where he stops his heart for 10 minutes. Rex enters Sherry's room and explains his job is to retrieve the artifact, and once he is done, he is allowed to wreak as much havoc as he wants. Rex then sees the artifact in Sherry's hands, but as he attacks her, Glenn stops him. While Glenn and Marco keep the terrorists busy, they let Sherry run away. Sid observes the movement of the terrorists and is quite excited about the whole situation. He decides to show up at night and snipes quite a few of them, so that he makes his grand appearances easier. He notices a girl running and almost begging to be captured and realizes she is Sherry. While she moves around, Sid ends up taking out several terrorists, saving her from being captured or detected. Sherry ends up tripping on the stairs and falls, but Sid captures her. Sherry finds the book she was looking for and explains that the artifact Eye of Avaris is the one that blocks their magic. Once the artifact had absorbed all it could absorb, it will release all the stored energy at once. Sherry guesses that the artifact is somewhere nearby, and if it releases all the energy, it will blow up and kill all in the auditorium. Sherry plans on using the basements and reach the auditorium. Once she is close to the Eye of Avaris, she will activate another artifact and stop the Eye of Avaris from exploding. However, she left all her tools needed to fine-tune this artifact in her room. Sid then states he will get them for her and leaves her. Rex is walking with 4 men to find Sherry, but in an instant, he ends up losing them. Sid then hits him before Rex manages to react. Sid proceeds attacking Rex and eventually takes him in a classroom with each seat taken by a dead terrorist. Sid attacks Rex again and kills him. After, Sid then brings the necessary tools to Sherry, who starts fine-tuning the artifact. Without magic, Iris is unable to do anything and is forced to stay outside the academy. Meanwhile, Sherry fine-tunes the artifact and is ready to head into the tunnels. But before they step into them, Sherry recalls seeing the death of her mother as a child. Sherry reaches the auditorium and seeing the cult knight holding the Eye of Avaris, she activates her artifact and disables the magic blocking field. In that moment, Rose attacks one of the terrorists, stating their magic is back and the students start fighting back. As the fight starts, Sid comes from the roof with other Shadow Garden members and engages the terrorists. The cult knight leaves but activates a system that causes the auditorium and the rest of the school to burst into flames. The cult knight burns some books. Sid appears and wonders why Lutheran is dressed like that. The cult knight removes his helmet, revealing he is indeed Lutheran, and wonders how Sid knows that, but Sid states it was obvious from the moment he saw him. Sid wonders why he did this. Lutheran explains that once he reached the top of the sword-fighting world, but soon he became sick. He easily lost the glory he fought hard to attain and started searching a way to cure his disease and found potential in a certain artifact. He funded Sherry's mother research and eventually found the artifact he longed for. However, Sherry's mother stated the Eye of Avaris was dangerous and wanted to give it to the government for safekeeping. Lutheran then killed Sherry's mother. Sherry didn't see him there and never realized it and continued her mother's research. Sid and Lutheran then face each other, but in an instant Lutheran cuts Sid and he falls through the window. A moment later, Shadow comes. Having experience with strong fighters, Lutheran immediately notes that he knows he is at disadvantage against Shadow. Not wanting to waste time, he pulls out the Eye of Avaris and the Control Unit artifact and explains that when you combine them, their true value shows. As he does, he starts overflowing with magical energy and feels reborn. Lutheran then starts attacking Shadow, however, Shadow easily blocks his attacks without even moving from his spot. Shadow then disarms Lutheran and proceeds stabbing his limbs. He then recalls how Lutheran stated he killed Sherry's mother and stabs him the same way and kills him. In that moment, Sherry arrives and sees her dead father and starts crying over his body. Shadow notes it's better if he doesn't tell her about her mother and just leaves. The academy gets closed for an earlier summer break. Sherry thanks Sid for his help the other day. She tells him that she decided to go study abroad. She needs to do something but can't do it at the moment with her knowledge. Elsewhere, Iris and Alexia visits Gamma's store to prepare for Alexia's trip to the sacred land as a special guest for the goddess's trial. Alexia intends to use the opportunity and speak with Archbishop and looks into dark rumors about corruption and missing orphans. After the terrorist attack, Rose heard that Sid is alive and rushed to find him. She found him covered in bandages and states he must have survived by his deep love to her. Later, Sid and Rose are traveling together in a train towards the sacred lands. Rose guesses that Sid is there to take on the goddess's trial. Sid is not sure but guesses that Alpha sends him for that and confirms it. Rose then explains that those that receive the goddess blessings may even marry a princess, and if he gets it, she will speak with her father about the young brave man. Reaching Lindworm, Sid sees some keychains of a sword piercing a left demonic arm. Rose explains that according to the legend, the hero Olivier cut off the left arm of the demon Diablos. Walking around, Rose notices a signing event of the author Natsume. Rose is a big fan of hers and they line up. Sid then checks some of her books and sees titles like Romeo and Juliet. He gets surprised when he sees Beta is Natsume, who used his wisdom to get herself famous. Beta signs a book and gives it to him, stating it contains all the details of the mission. Alpha is next to Archbishop Drake's dead body and wonders what he was hiding that they even killed a man of his high status. While in Lindworm, Sid goes to a hot spring. Unexpectedly, Alexia is already there too. He wonders why she is in Lindworm, and she explains she is a special guest for the goddess trial. Alexia asks Sid the same question, and Sid explains that a friend invited him, telling him that there is a fun event. Sid guesses it's the goddess trial, but wonders what exactly is the event. Alexia explains it's an annual event of the fighting ritual. Ancient warriors awaken and come out from the sanctuary to compete against challenges. To participate, you need to request it in advance, and the ancient warriors only answer the call of challengers they deem worthy. A few years ago, the wandering swordsman Venom managed to summon Olivier, but he lost to him. Alexia explains that she isn't there to fight. She had an audit with the Archbishop, but he was murdered. If Sid joins the Crimson Knights, she can tell him more about it, but Sid isn't interested. The new acting Archbishop Jack Nelson cancels the audit with Alexia, explaining that she was there investigating the previous Archbishop, but he is now dead, and they will be investigating his death. The goddess trial is starting, and Alexia is sitting next to Beta. The trial starts, and all contenders fail to summon a warrior. Sid is getting bored and hopes the trial ends soon. In that moment, the announcer reveals the next challenger is from Midgar Academy for Dark Knights, Sid. Sid wonders if he should come out, but if he do so, the ancient warriors are usually matching the strength of those that come out, and it may be revealed he is quite strong. But if he refuses, if the academy hears that, he may get expelled. He creates a light above the arena to distract the people and then jumps in as Shadow. A person then appears. Beta recognizes the person as Aurora, the Witch of Calamity. However, there isn't much information about her due to the chaos and destruction that came after her. Shadow and Aurora face each other and smile in excitement. As they start fighting, they are both enjoying their battle. Initially, Shadow is just observing and dodging all of Aurora's attacks. He sees that Aurora can't use her full power and then defeats her with a single slash. Shadow then leaves, shocking everyone that he won. Sid feels he has done a good job, and people will talk about Shadow and forget about Sid. A magical door then appears next to him. He moves away, but the door follows him. Realizing he won't be able to escape it, he decides to enter. Another door appeared in the middle of the arena. Nelson wonders if the sanctuary responded to Shadow and explains that the door appears to those who are worthy to pass through it. The door starts opening, and Nelson gives orders to remove the citizens and that the trial is cancelled. He then tries to make Alexia and the rest leave, but Shadow Garden appears led by Alpha. Epsilon had defeated Nelson's guards and states he will be coming with them inside the gate. Nelson refuses and calls his guard Venom to kill Epsilon. He attempts to cut Epsilon, but she quickly defeats Venom. Epsilon then grabs him and jumps into the door. Other Shadow Garden members take Beta as hostage and get in the door as well. The door starts to close, but Alexia and Rose jump in as well. Alexia and Rose are transported to where Alpha is. Alexia states she tripped and fell into the door, but Alpha doesn't care and tells her that it's fine if she also learns. Alpha explains that this is where the hero Olivier cut the Diablo's left arm and they sealed it. They came to learn more about the cult, but know that Nelson won't talk. Alpha then points at a statue of the hero Olivier, surprising the girls it's an elf woman. Alpha then shows her face, which is the same as Olivier. Nelson then realizes she was a possessed elf, but as she wasn't compatible, she should have been dead. Alpha states they know the truth behind Olivier and the possessed. They suspect that the cult goal isn't just reviving the demon and states they should proceed to see for themselves. Alpha then activates the big door and opens it. Sid enters a room where Aurora is and wonders if she summoned him. Aurora states she didn't, but notes they had a fun fight. Sid wonders how they can leave, but Aurora states her memory is incomplete and doesn't have any memories of ever leaving. Sid then frees her, and Aurora states, since they have the same goal of leaving this place, they should work together. She explains she knows how to free herself and that the sanctuary is a memory prison created from ancient battles. If they go to its center and destroy its magical core, then she will be free. Sid agrees and wonders what she will do once she is free, and Aurora states she will vanish into nothing. Alpha and the group explore the facility, and Alpha explains that this is the memories of the hero Olivier. Long ago, the cult gathered orphaned children and used them for experiments. Most of the children ended up dying, and a small group of girls survived. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora see a memory of young Aurora who is crying. Aurora states that to move forward, they need to end this memory. She slaps the young Aurora, telling her that crying won't change anything, and soon the memory shatters. Alpha explains that Olivier was one of the compatible children, and they implanted Diablo's cells in her. Nelson states they didn't have a choice as they needed power to fight the demon. Alpha proceeds explaining that once Olivier matured, she was given a mission to extract new cells from Diablo's. Olivia remained obedient, believing that if she does her mission, it will lead to people living in peace. But no matter how many parts she cut, the demon still lived. The cult used powerful artifacts to immobilize the left arm and gain more Diablo cells. They were able to create red pills, but its side effects were too strong and not what the cult wanted. They were able to make pills that will grant tremendous power and ageless body. Alpha points to a man in the memory and to Nelson. Alexia and the rest realize it's the same man. Nelson reveals they call the drug beads of Diablos. Alpha states it had two flaws. The first flaw is that they need to take the beads once a year or the effect will disappear. The second flaw is that they can only produce small amounts, and Nelson reveals it's 12 per year. Alpha guesses that's why the Knights of Rounds contain only 12 members. She asks Nelson, calling him the 11th of the rounds, if she is correct. Nelson confirms and states he is Nelson the Avaricious. He buffs himself, but in that moment, Delta stabs him from behind and throws him down into the water. Nelson comes out of the water, breaking the memory and separating them into groups. As he faces Alpha and Delta, he multiplies himself. Delta easily cuts down Nelson's copies, but feels something is wrong. Nelson explains that the closer they are to the center of the sanctuary, the more their power is drained. Alpha adds that at the same time, the closer is Nelson to the center, he gains more power. Sid and Aurora reach another memory, a battlefield with many casualties. They'd find young Aurora crying again, and Aurora takes Sid's sword, wanting to kill her to end the memory. However, as she gets close, the dead start attacking them. Aurora explains that the sanctuary is rejecting them. Sid wonders what will happen if Aurora dies, and she guesses she will return in the first room where they met. Epsilon's group find an archive with information about the possessed and realize this could have happened to them too if they didn't meet Shadow. Etta had created Polaroid cameras based on information from Shadow, and they take pictures of the information. Sid and Aurora are easily defeating the zombies, but as more are coming, Sid goes and kills the young Aurora, ending the memory. The two then reach the center of the sanctuary. Aurora tells Sid that they need to destroy the magic core, which is on the other side of the door. Sid considers cutting the chains and the door, but feels the sword will break. Aurora notes there should be a key. There is a sword in front of the door, and Aurora explains it's written on it that it can cut the chains. Looking at it, Sid is sure he won't be able to pull it out from the ground. As he attempts and can't pull it out, he confirms, stating it must be drawn out by the Chosen One. Watching Delta fight Nelson, as Delta defeats another clone of Nelson, the memory breaks and Nelson is surprised she managed to defeat over 100 copies without even breaking a sweat. Nelson then sees a statue of Olivia and calls for Olivia to come. Olivia comes out, but at the same time, Epsilon joins Alpha and states they are done with the investigation and can leave. Nelson is surprised that they are running away, but Alpha explains their objective is to cut off the source of power, and now they know how the sanctuary defenses work, so they will be returning again. As Alpha and the rest leave, Nelson starts wondering what to say to the rest of the cult members and guesses. He will explain that he lured them here to expose their identities, and that with Alpha's blood they can perfect the beads. He then gets a notification that someone is in the sanctuary's center. Nelson appears where Sid and Aurora are. Sid sees Olivia and that she has the same face as Alpha. Nelson then sends Olivia at them and Sid goes to face her, knowing that she is quite strong. Olivia attacks Sid, who blocks her attacks, but she sends him flying everywhere and ends up breaking his sword. Nelson orders Olivia to finish him off. Aurora jumps in and asks him to stop. Even though she doesn't remember it well, she knows that no human can defeat Olivia. Sid, who has been keeping his right eye closed for a while, opens it, stating he got them. Olivia stabs Sid, but he grabs her and bites her neck, ripping it and defeating her. Nelson summons countless copies of Olivia. Several attack Sid, but he opens his right eye and defeats them using his magic. Nelson is surprised he is able to use magic. Sid explains that he just tempered with the magic until it was too solid to be absorbed. It took him some time, but it's something simple. Nelson can't believe that's possible and orders the Olivia copies to kill him. Sid fights them, but as his wound continues to bleed, he notes the playtime is over. He then decides to take out all copies at the same time and starts casting his ultimate spell, I am the all-range atomic, but before he finishes, one of the Oliviers stabs him in the heart. However, Sid is unaffected and finishes his spell. The explosion obliterates all Oliviers along with the chained door and everything else. Sid wakes up with Aurora by his side. She is surprised that he survived being stabbed in the heart, and Sid explains that he used magic to move his heart to the other side. Aurora starts disappearing and confesses that she was the one that called him there. Before completely disappearing, Aurora tells Sid what to do if he ever met the real her. Alexia, Rose, and Beta look at the aftermath of Sid's spell. Alexia feels frustrated in being weak and unable to do anything. She wants to start an organization with Rose and Beta and look up for information and decide what to do. Beta states that they have no precise plan, but both Rose and Beta agree to form a team. Epsilon reports to Alpha that the sanctuary has been obliterated. The Holy Sword vaporized along with the magical core. Epsilon also confirms their theory that Aurora has another name, the Demon Diablos. Epsilon wonders if she should report to Shadow, but Alpha states it's not needed as he knows everything. Alpha receives news that the Royal Chancellor Perv Ashat will be visiting the royal capital of Midgar. Alexia explains to Iris that the Archbishop was part of the cult. To be able to keep the sanctuary a secret, they need some big organization, and she wants to investigate the divine teachings. Iris had suggested the same thing to their father, but he told them to not do anything. However, Iris feels that if she wins the Bushin Festival again, she will have more backing and support of the people, and their father will have to listen to her. Alexia wonders if the cult or Shadow Garden will get involved, but Iris is sure of her sword skills. Iris notes to herself that her Crimson Knights lost their strongest members and probably won't be able to rebuild them. The Knight Order was supporting her, but she guesses they hate her as she took their strongest members and let them die. Iris feels she needs to win the tournament and show them a path. Elsewhere, Rose is training, however, she feels strange and demonic possession appears on her chest. The Bunshin Festival begins and strong warriors from all over the world begin to gather. Seeing them, Sid also wants to enter the tournament with a weak-looking character. Sid visits Gamma and asks her to help him with a disguise and enter the Bunshin Festival. Gamma uses a special slime gel that will help him conceal his face and shape. Sid agrees and Gamma turns him into mundane. A girl named Ana Rosa, who managed to summon an ancient warrior at the goddess trial, sees Sid in his mundane character. Looking at his cheap gear and sickly body, she states he is an amateur and warns him to not participate in the festival. Sid tells her to not judge a book by its cover and that he doesn't need her help. He walks away smiling that his disguise works. He is immediately stopped by Quentin, who tells him he needs to take her advice. Sid states that he is at least stronger than Quentin. That angers Quentin, who picks up Sid and punches him into an alley. Sid leaves, which surprises Ana Rosa that he isn't hurt. Later, he meets Rose, who explains she got friends with Alexia and Natsume. She also reveals that she is going to meet her father and he will be introducing her to her fiancé Perv Ashat. Rose explains that she is a princess from a land of art and culture, but she disappointed and betrayed a lot of people when she decided to become a knight. When she was young, she met a hero and was inspired by him to pick up the sword. She asks Sid if he will keep believing in her and Sid confirms it. The next day, Sid and Skell are watching fight. Skell explains that he is gathering data so that he can make better bets. Sid ignores him, but Goldo shows behind Skell, stating he finds that fascinating. Next match is Gonzalez versus Mundane Man. Sid states he needs to take a dump and leaves. Goldo decides to analyze the fight and explains you can get general idea of the fighter's strength before the fight. Goldo expects Gonzalez to win in less than a second. A second after the fight starts, Gonzalez falls down. People assume that Gonzalez tripped and fell and Mundane is announced as winner, which disappoints the crowd. Ana Rosa, however, saw how Mundane landed 2 quick punches on the chin. Tomorrow, Mundane will be facing Goldo. Early in the morning, Skell knocks on Sid's door and shows him the newspaper stating that Rose stabbed her fiancé Perv Ashat and ran away. Alexiev and Beta look at Rose's situation. Beta is informed that Rose made it through the sewers and is into the underground ruins right now. Between the tournament fights, Sid encounters Beatrix, who smells the scent of elf on Sid. Beatrix explains she is looking for the daughter of her sister and wonders if Sid had seen someone that looks like her. Sid is immediately reminded of Alpha, but denies it. Soon Sid will have to fight Goldo, so he enters the arena in the form of Mundane. The match starts and Goldo rushes at Mundane. He swings his sword, but Mundane cracks his neck and dodges it. Angry for humiliating him, Goldo decides to get serious and creates a golden dragon from his magical power. He rushes at Mundane, but Mundane sneezes and blows away the dragon and Goldo, which ends up defeating him. In the next fight, Mundane easily defeats Quentin. People are surprised on what is going on. Later, while walking around town, Sid hears someone playing a piano. As he recognizes the music, he wonders if it should exist in this world and decides to see who is playing the piano, since it may be another reincarnated person. Sid is surprised to see it's Epsilon, who, like Gamma and Beta, is using what he told her to become famous. Elsewhere, Rose recalls how she met her father and Perv Ashat the other day. When she saw her father, the king, she knew something was wrong with him. She drew her sword and attacked Perv Ashat, but the guards attacked her. Rose believes she made a rational decision, but later realizes it wasn't. Even if she managed to kill Perv, he is just one of the cult, whose roots have already too deep within the Oriana kingdom. Perev told her to turn herself in before the Bushin festival or he will have her father kill one of his guests. Rose now wonders if it's best to turn herself in as that way it may avoid a war. Rose hears the Moonlight Sonata and starts following the music. Eventually, she finds Shadow, who is playing on the piano. Shadow asks her what she hoped to accomplish, and Rose states she wanted to protect her people but couldn't do anything. Shadow gives her power and heals her possession. After Shadow leaves, some members of the cult show up and Rose defeats them easily. In the evening, Sid returns home. However, he is surprised to see his sister still waiting for him. Claire chokes Sid, explaining that she was getting more and more angry each second she was waiting for him. She is also angry that he keeps breaking his promises, but hands him a ticket to the Bushin festival, telling him be there and watch her as she is replacing Princess Rose. Sid goes to the Bushin festival and finds out that the ticket his sister gave him isn't an ordinary reserved seat ticket, but a VIP one. Going to his seat, he sees Iris and assumes he got it wrong. Iris realizes he is Claire's brother and tells him he is in the correct seat. Some students ask Iris if some competitor caught her eye, and Iris explains it's Anna Rosa, but Iris herself still intends to win the tournament. Iris explains that there is one more person who got her eye, an elf who is also the first Bushin Festival champion. Although she won't be competing, the two students realize Iris is talking about Beatrix, but note that she hasn't showed her face in public in over a decade. Sid recalls Beatrix, and that he knew she was strong, but didn't know she was famous. Sid then excuses himself and leaves. Perev Ashat takes Sid's seat and explains that his king will be attending the festival tomorrow. Perev asks her what she thinks of Anna Rosa opponent, Mundane Man. Iris states she sees him for the first time, but he doesn't look very strong. The fight between Mundane Man and Anna Rosa starts. Anna Rosa immediately closes the distance and starts attacking, but Mundane parries or dodges her attacks. Mundane then quickly overpowers her, and Anna Rosa realizes that her only choice is to try and counterattack when he attacks. She waits for him to attack and attempts to counterattack, but Mundane dodges. Mundane then slashes and defeats Anna Rosa. Sid starts to like the VIP seating as the maids get him anything he wants free of charge. Moments later, Iris hears the guards stopping a woman with a sword and want her to give it to them. Iris then sees it's Beatrix and explains she invited her. Perev Ashat drugs King Oriana again. Perev is sure that Rose will come to save her father and notes that since she showed signs of possession, she will also become prime material for the cult's experimentation. If Rose doesn't show up, Perev intends to use King Oriana to kill King Midgar. Perev plans to make the new king of Midgar his puppet and guesses the best time to move is during Iris' match. However, he is worried about Mundane Man as he couldn't find anything about him and worries that he could be quite dangerous. He goes into the VIP seating, and as he passes by Beatrix, she states that he and the king stink. Perev gets angry and orders to take her out, but Iris stops him and explains she is her guest and is Beatrix, the war goddess. Perev then realizes who she is and that she may have awakened the hero's blood. Beatrix apologizes and Perev does the same. He takes his seat and starts to worry about Beatrix, guessing he needs to eliminate her as well. He also wonders if he will be able to assassinate the king of Midgar, but states it will all go normal if Rose shows up. Claire wins her fight and Iris heads out for a match against Mundane Man. As their fight starts, Iris feels that she loses her head and jumps backwards in fear. She is surprised but gathers herself and stands up. In that moment, she feels she is losing her leg and realizes that the entire arena is in Mundane's striking range. Iris keeps feeling that she is losing limbs from Mundane's attacks. Iris gets angry and attacks, but in that moment she realizes that Mundane isn't even holding his sword. Mundane then pushes her sword away and grabs her by the throat and takes her down. Placing his sword at her neck, he wonders what is wrong as they are just starting. Perev can't believe that Iris lost without being able to make a single move. Rose then shows up and apologizes to her father. Rose cries and jumps at Perev, who then uses the king as a shield. However, Rose proceeds and stabs him. Perev is shocked at how easily she killed her father and gets angry. He then sees Rose holding her blade against her neck and orders his men to stop her. Mundane then comes from the window, asking if that's the choice Rose made. Mundane then states it's time to reveal himself and turns to Shadow. Shadow tells her that her fight isn't over. Rose then stands up and leaves. Perev wants to stop her, but all of his men are already defeated by other Shadow Garden members. Beatrix then states she will do it and jumps at Shadow. As they clash swords, Perev uses the chance to escape. After Mundane Man goes into the VIP seating and reveals his true appearance, Iris realizes that he is Shadow. Shadow is fighting Beatrix, however he starts moving so fast that she barely manages to notice him. Iris shows up and states she wants to join the fight, She draws a blade and Shadow realizes it's a mithril blade with ancient runes, surprising him that she intends to use an artifact. Their fight continues through the city and the two manage to push him towards a construction on a building. Shadow then takes 2 crowbars and blocks both Iris and Beatrix's attacks. Meanwhile, Rose had escaped the stadium and wonders on what to do next. Alpha shows up and tells her that she has 2 choices, to continue fighting alone or to fight alongside Shadow Garden. Thinking for a moment, Rose decides to join Shadow Garden. Back to the fight. As they keep fighting, they reach a tower where Shadow gets behind Beatrix, but she blocks it easily, noting that she got used to his attack. Shadow congratulates her, stating that in sword skill, they are almost equal. However, her use of magic isn't as good. Iris tells Beatrix that she will immobilize him even if it costs her her life, and then Beatrix can take him down. Iris attacks Shadow. As she swings her sword, she lets it go and attempts to grab Shadow. However, Shadow kicks her in the chin with his knee. Beatrix finishes charging her attack and attacks. She knocks Shadow's sword, but he dodges her attack and then grabs and slams her over Iris. Shadow attempts to leave, but the girls manage to stand up and Iris tells him that by now every knight in the city should have been mobilized. He has turned the whole kingdom into his enemy and there isn't a place he can run to. However, to their shock, Shadow starts laughing maniacally and then states he ain't running as there is no reason to. He activates his power, covering most of the city, and states that the playtime is over. Shadow starts casting his I Am Atomic attack, but stops before the end and leaves. Seeing that, Iris drops on her knees and cries. Sherry read on the newspaper that the demon Shadow was chased away by Iris and Beatrix. Rose is still missing after she killed her father. In Oriana Kingdom, Mordred conveyed his disappointment with Periv, to the point where he was forced to beg his superiors forgiveness for his failure. Periv also told his superiors that as long as the cult holds the royal family, Rose won't be able to stay hidden. Beatrix leaves the city, disappointed she couldn't find the one she was looking for. Elsewhere, Rose and Alpha reach the Cognum domain. Alpha then explains they are heading past the mountain and deeper into the woods. Rose is surprised as magical beasts infest the region. Alpha explains that when Shadow visited the mountains, he battled the Mist Dragon. The dragon lost and dubbed Shadow ruler of this realm. When they reach their destination in the forest, Alpha explains that this is the ancient city Alexandria, Shadow Garden's base of operation. Alpha takes Rose to Lambda and explains that Rose is a new recruit and tells Lambda to train her. Lambda calls 664 and 665 and tells them that she is putting the new recruit in their squad, naming Rose as number 666. Back at the underground ruins, Shadow plays Moonlight Sonata once more as feathers descend upon him. He says that everything has been going according to his designs, but the hour of awakening will be drawing near. The end.